Aren't you sick and tired of studies that tell you day after day after day that one day something is good for you, the next day it could probably kill you, and here you're sitting here wondering, what am I supposed to do? Today, I'm going to help you with some information that will clarify some of the information that you hear and read about studies that can help you or hurt you. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Muscle Repair Show. My name is Butch Phelps, and today we're going to talk about all those crazy studies that we hear about every single day. It's enough to make you mad after a while. One day you read a study, especially with health, and if you take this supplement or you eat this food, you're going to live to be 100 years old. Tomorrow a study comes out and says, no, if you eat that food, you'll die within 10 years. It is maddening after a while. And for most people who are reading those studies or hearing about them, they just finally just throw it out the window and say, you know what, I'm just going to eat whatever I want and I die when I die. And I get it. But today I want to dive into the studies themselves so that you can actually have a little clarity. And is this study just for entertainment, or is this study actual something I need to pay attention to? So in the world of studies, there's three major types of studies. There's the observational study, there is the qualitative study, and then there is the quantitative study. So let's begin with the observation study. So to get a good picture of that, it would be like you and I going over at a Starbucks sitting by a major highway, watching all the cars go back and forth, and between the two of us, we decide that there's more blue cars in this particular city than there are any other color out there. How did we get that? Is it true? Well, based on our observation of what's happening on this particular street at this particular time, it may appear to be true. However, if we actually took the time and took account of all the different colors of the cars in the city, we may find out we are totally wrong about that. And that's the problem with an observational study. You have to think about it, an observational study, that is a study where somebody observes something at a specific time and they're trying to translate that across the broad spectrum. You have to be careful with that because number one, is the sample size correct? If we're talking about the cars in my neighborhood, it could be correct. But if we're talking about the cars in my city or my state or my country or my continent, then it's probably way off. So for entertainment value, I can say, okay, on this particular street at this particular time of the day, it certainly seems like there's many more blue cars than there are any other color out there. The second type of study, the qualitative study. Now the qualitative study typically involves a questionnaire that you hand to people to fill out. Now we all know that in specific studies or topics, let's say, people will tend to lie, especially if we're talking about diet. So when you ask people about what they eat and how much they eat, even though they probably ate pizza or hamburgers and fries or whatever, because they're afraid of what it may sound like to the person reading the study, they may not put that in. It's a little white lie, as my mother would call that. So be careful with those, because with a qualitative study, there's no actual numbers that you're gauging one thing to the other. What you're doing is you're taking the answers from questions of, so let's say 100 people. And if you look at the answers on the questionnaire, based on the questionnaire, then it may appear that something is true amongst that 100 people. Now, there's all kinds of things you can do with that. How do you design the questions to get to exactly the answer that you want? Is the study paid for by somebody who would prefer to look really good? And then therefore you can massage the questions around, no pun intended, but you can massage the questions around to get the result that you want. And so you have to be careful when they say, we polled so many people, and based on 1,000 people that we polled, everybody likes French fries from X. Well, it could have been paid for by X. And it was 1,000 people who had just left X. And so naturally they would like that, okay? So that's the thing to think about with that is understand that the questions, how are they worded, how are they placed, and who actually paid for that poll or that study or that questionnaire. And then that will help you get a better sense of, is this really factual, or is this something I can just, it's a trivia thing, throw it out the window and go away. Now, the third study is a quantitative study. Now, with a quantitative study, it takes a lot more work because you're literally looking at hard numbers about something. So let's go back to the color of the car thing. In a quantitative study, what you're looking at is, number one, you would take and figure out how many white cars are there in my city, how many black cars are in my city, how many blue cars, and every other color in the rainbow, so that we had quantitative numbers on that. All right. So then, once you're seeing cars out on the road, and you start to see cars having accidents, and you're trying to prove that a certain color car has more accidents than any other color out there, now you know how many blue cars, let's say, are in my city, and we know that blue cars are in 4,200 accidents a year in my city, and so now we can take that number, compare it to the amount of accidents in each color of the cars that are out there, and now when we come back, we actually have numbers that I can say a blue car gets in accidents 1 out of every 10 times, or 1 out of every 20 times, depending on what the numbers show you. This type of study is actually giving you hard numbers about how do they compare to make that happen. So when you're listening to people describe a study, many times they will say, the reporter or the journalist will say, this is an observational study about blah, blah, blah. You understand is there's just a couple people watching and observing what was happening. This is a qualitative study, a questionnaire, a poll, or something like that. And you know that people can lie, or it could be something that was bought and paid for by a company that's trying to get you to buy their product. Like 5 out of every 6 dentists recommend this toothpaste, and this happens to be the toothpaste I sell. Well, of course, they want to get those numbers to get you to buy that toothpaste. But whereas a quantitative study, we've actually taken the data, the hard numbers of the data, compared it, put it in a situation, and then compared those numbers back so that we know literally what the numbers are. Now, the last and final thought on this is that regardless of which type of study that it is, number one, who paid for the study is a key part of that. Number two, are we taking into account all the things that could actually affect the numbers? In other words, if I had it at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, would the particular result that I got be different than if I took it at 9 o'clock in the morning? So we want to take out all of the things out of that study that could possibly change the results of that study. That's interesting to figure that out. And then when they start talking about this study shows that across America, 25% of the people may get so-and-so. Well, the thing you want to look at there is, have they actually looked at enough people in America that you can literally say that this is comparative to 300 million people? Because if they're telling you that they looked at 100 cases, there's no way that's going to extrapolate out or be transferred out to 300 million people in the same fashion as that 100 cases. So those are a few tips that you want to look at when you're looking at studies, and instead of going mad with trying to figure out what to do just based on one study or another and bouncing around like a ping pong ball. Once you understand what you're looking at, now what you'll get from that is a better sense of, is this something I should really be concerned about, or something that I can just look at as infotainment? So if this is important and helps you, please subscribe down below. Be sure to ring the bell, and as always, share this with your friends. And for now, see ya.